So, one kind of market would be where you would get your tomatoes and such, right? Another, farmer's market. Another market would be what Derek wants to get into, like the markets, right? But still different market today. So this is basically, we're talking about the total persons or organizations that are potential customers for a certain thing, for the lack of a better term. Meaning, what do you specialize in for your business? Who is your market audience? That makes sense? So, the example I have up here is corn seed. Right? So, how many different markets are there? Well, there's lots because there's a lot of different kind of corn seed, right? But in general, if we would group it all in one, we could have different kind of markets from like an Iowa market to a Nebraska market to a United States market. Okay, so to a world market. Is corn grown somewhere else? I'm sure it is, but I don't know where. Okay, Brazil? Is it really? Are you guys lying to me?
No, Brazil.
Okay.
They
So,
worship.
what they're saying then is, what is the market that we're selling to? Does that make sense? So if we're just concentrating on Iowa, we could figure out how many Iowa farmers there are. If we're talking about the Midwest, then we'd have to include Nebraska, South Dakota.
How would you go about figuring out how many farms
You would have to basically drive around and see who's actually partaking in field work, right? Because even if you live on a farm, doesn't necessarily mean that you're a crop farmer, right? So you would have to, they would have to have some kind of census or something. Somebody's job would have to be that, to go around and see, all right? So when you're talking about the market share, you're talking about a percentage of total sales of one market that each owner has. All right, so who's a crop seed guy? You guys are? Yeah. Okay. So how many people do you sell to? You know? Quite a bit.
I thought you were talking about we buy.
Okay, so who would you buy your seed from? Okay, so any idea how many people buy from him? Probably not. A lot. Okay, so Dave Hine would be somebody too, right? So those guys would have, who else?
Mark Kelson.
Okay, Mark. Those three guys would each have their own market. That makes sense? So they're saying, what percentage does Harpenau have of that market? What percentage of that market does Hine have? What percentage does Mark Callison have? That's what they're talking about market share. What percentage are they selling to? So it's a percent. And then it's based on the number of units sold, or you could do it by the dollar value. All right? So realistically, when you're talking about the dollar or the percent of the market, the example they have would be, what is the percent that a Chinese restaurant would do for Chinese food in Lamar's, for instance? Or do we even have a Chinese restaurant anymore?
Yeah, we have one.
Okay. Okay, Bamboo. So realistically, we would say that Bamboo would probably do what percentage of Chinese food market in Lamar's? Maybe 100? Does anybody else sell Chinese?
Walmart.
Does Hy-Vee in the deli?
I don't think they got. I thought they could do it.
Does Quick Start now have some kind of Chinese section?
I hope.
Okay.
And they're pretty good.
Okay.
Probably not.
So do you see what I'm saying there? So what's the market of Chinese food? We would realistically say that Bamboo would have, what, 95, 98% of the market? You know? Does that make sense? Okay, so, but what would that restaurant have if we went to the state of Iowa? Now it would go back to a really smaller percent, right? So now it would probably go from 98% in Lamar's to the state of Iowa is maybe 5%, 2%, maybe even a point something, okay? But it'd be really small. And then if we went a step further and said, what do they have the market of in the United States? Now we're talking about really, really small percentage, right? Probably 0.0 something percent. But does that make sense what we're talking about there? So those three guys that we said, we're just talking about three guys around the Mars. Who knows how many more people there are, right? I don't know. So you're talking about Lamar's, and then if you had that around Northwest Iowa, you would know that many more people, so we could see how much percent that each one of those guys would be in that particular market. That makes sense? So again, why would this change, or why would this be a big deal to you? Well, if you had a restaurant and you wanted to bring in Chinese food, and as long as it was decent, instead of what you guys said your opinion of the Hy-Vee deli was, or whatever.
It's pretty bad.
Okay, so Nilles opens up a restaurant and he decides that he wants to do Chinese food, or at least have a section of Chinese food. Is that a good idea? It's probably not a bad idea, right? Because why? It's not anywhere else. If somebody wants Chinese, they basically have one option right now. Okay? But would it be wise for me, especially as a young Caucasian male, to open up a Chinese restaurant in the middle of Chinatown? Probably not, right? Okay, so you got to think about, does my percent of market for that particular whatever fit into what I want to do? Right.
I just so like every time I drive by a street that has a business building, I see a new chiropractor.
You're right. There was another one that just opened, wasn't
And
there?
there's one in that old building by Subway now, and now there's like one downtown, another one downtown. It's crazy.
Jackson Recovery.
Oh yeah, that's where I saw it. Yeah, down that little side street. You're right.
Is that the white building with the
Yeah.
white lettering?
I still
Right. So there's a great point right there. What's the market of each one of those cars? Obviously, there's a market for it, right? Because why would they keep opening? So there must be a lot of people that have back problems in Lamar's or the surrounding area. I don't know. All right? But you're exactly right. That's a great point. So notice here, my next point up here was just think about whether it was nationally, a small community-wise or globally. So look at this. Pharmaceutical companies that do 5% of market, but the market is global market. The market globally was worth $5 billion. And 5% of that is, they're making $200 million. Okay, so even though that they're only 5%, it's 5% of the global percentage. So when it's 5% of something that big, bless you, you're talking major money. Could you imagine if you were 50% of that global market? You would be astronomically rich, right? So what is there something like that commands everything in the world? One product that you can think of? Is there one product that you would say everybody in the world would use, but only one company has a piece of it? Like pharmaceuticals, how many different pharmaceutical companies are there? You can't even name some of them, right? So there's a thousands of them, all right? And each one of them are 5%, but at that 5%, they're making $200 million a year. So is there some product that would be used all around the world that only one company manufactures? I don't think so, probably, right? Because even if that was true, even if, okay, so kind of, right? But like computers, so computers would be a good one.
SC Johnson was half this country.
It started with Gateway, basically, and Microsoft. But then all these other little computer companies got into it, right? So I don't think that, what I'm saying is, I don't think that exists.
Do you think then like McDonald's would be a big percent of the global for fast food?
For fast food, it's probably, but I would still say it's probably only like that 5 or 10%. you know?
Yeah.
But then, because look at how many other things that you could group into that fast food.
Yeah.
But you're totally right, you know? Go ahead.
I was gonna ask a company about like Ford, like when they built their cars in Detroit. So would that just be like 100% like of the market, just
For
like when they just
Detroit.
started up?
Right. And then they would have realistically been to not only that community, but then the state, to the nation, to, you know, because that's where it started.
Yeah.
But then everybody else said, wow, look how much money he's making. So I'm gonna make my own brand of it. And that's where all the other companies came from. But yeah, essentially that's where it would start. And so that's where Molly was saying it starts out as that monopoly, but then everybody starts chipping away at it because they want that piece of it. So, Tiff says there's only one example.
Well, there's two, but there's only.
Everybody understand what we're talking about though?
Yes.
Alright, turn to page 453. We'll look at one example and then you got 15 minutes to do your homework. Letter A, 2 publishers sell daily newspapers in the city of Wilson. Each day the Wilson Post sells 16,000 papers and the Wilson Daily News sells 11,000 papers. What market share of the daily newspaper sale does the Wilson Post have? So what are we going to do here?
Add them both together and then divide Divide the Wilson Post amount by the 11.
Perfect. Did everybody hear what they said? Add the two numbers together in the problem. 16,000 plus 11,000. That is going to be what portion of your fraction? The denominator. That's going to be on the bottom. Okay? So then they asked for the Wilson Post, so then I go back and use 16,240 over whatever the grand total was. And what did you say now? 58%. So they have 58%. And it should be over 50, right? If you just look at the numbers. One was 16,000, one was 11,000. It's way higher, you know. So if it was, you know, basically what are we at, 27? Let's just round it to say there's 28,000. If it was 14 to 14, then it would be split right down the middle and it'd be 50-50. So again, so here's the question. Why is the one paper at 58% and the other one's a little lower? What?
Location?
Maybe. What else could tie into all that?
Forest fires?
Doubt it. What else? Why would one newspaper be more popular than the other?
They have better stories,
Okay.
or they write better.
Okay.
Age difference.
What?
Age difference.
Age difference. Exactly right. Right? Maybe the one's been around for 30 more years. Right? Maybe one's a little cheaper. Probably not, but
Old people start dying over.
okay. Maybe it's an old people paper versus a young people paper, right? So that's where Tiff's is a little higher because she still has some old people reading hers. Never know, okay? Make sense? Chain of tire stores is estimated to have 21% of the new tire market. If the new tire sales in the county were 126,000, how many new tires are likely to be sold by the chain? I'm just going to take those two numbers and multiply them together. So 26,460. Don't forget to change that percent into a decimal, right?
Yeah.
So I'm moving it 2 places to the left. So 8 problems. You got 12 minutes.